Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. In this episode, I'm joined by Paul Micallef, and Paul is open and real and raw in this episode with his journey of starting a business at just 24 years old, of growing and scaling that business into something that he dreamed of for a long time, and then eventually losing the business during the 2008 crash. But then we reflect back on the learnings from that and how he used that experience to grow the business that he runs today, Pegasus. Paul also shares what he does from a personal branding perspective, from an outreach perspective, from running his own podcast to feed the rest of the business. If you want to know what it really takes to restart a business after failing, or if you want to hear more about feeding your business through personal branding, this is the episode for you. Paul, welcome to Amplifying Recruitment.
No, thanks for having me.
So, for people that don't know you, will you do like a little 60-second intro?
Yeah, so I'm the founder, owner of a business called Pegasus Search Selection. We've got two types of our business. We've got my side that looks after construction consultancy, and then the other side headed by my fellow director Chris, who looks after the renewable space.
If you don't mind, so before, obviously you've had Pegasus since 2009. Mm-hmm. Before that you had a company called Jigsaw, mm-hmm. which I think was 2001.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And then during that horrendous sort of period that we had in 2008, that business ceased to exist. Do you mind sharing a bit about like what happened there?
Yeah, of course. So I was 24 when I set up Jigsaw, same business that I think you started in, Jamie, BBT.
Yeah.
I was there about 2 years. Got a kind of desk PQS off the floor really, because it was in a really bad state when I took it over in the north. Hit Rookie of the Year. We won Officer of the Year. We did really well. But I was only there maybe 18 months and thought, this is crazy. I've got consultant in my name, and I'm not doing consultancy. I'm just throwing mud at the wall, just throwing CVs out. So anyway, set up Jigsaw. We did really well, grew the business. In 2007, if you'd have asked me and my fellow partner at the time, a guy called James, where we were going, we'd have just said we were going up and up and up. The market was absolutely flying. We just moved into an amazing office, which we spent an absolute fortune on. So yeah, it was called Jigsaw. We had this ridiculous lit up jigsaw wall as you walked in. It was a silly amount of money we spent at the time. I think we probably spent, circa 100 grand at the time. So that was back in 2007, nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were doing really well. But then, of course, 2008 had different plans for all of us, really. We were a business that we just kept on reinvesting every year because we believed we were building something. And we got to nearly 40 heads. And then 2008 started getting progressively worse. We started letting some people go, but still, by the time Layman's went, I think in October, we still had 20 odd heads. And we were fucked basically, Jamie, because we had no cash reserves, because we were probably maybe naive business owners, but also the same, maybe back in 2007 we were very committed and say we just got this new office, really high rent in the centre of Leeds. We spent a fortune on the fit out, etc. But we knew we were screwed. We knew just, all of our clients just stopped overnight recruiting, as many recruiters faced. We went to our two biggest creditors, essentially, which was the landlord and the bank, who we had an overdraft with as well as a loan. And basically neither of them believed us. It's like, you have seen the news, you have seen the press, and just nobody believed us that we were in a dire position. So, we tried to battle on. We kind of tried to appease the rest of our creditors, pulled in all the debt that we did have still left. But it was a really dark time. We put my life and soul into it. I was married earlier that year. All of my team were at my wedding. There were a lot of them I consider still to this day close friends. I lost my father to cancer on the 4th of November. And then 15th of December, I had to tell my remaining staff that I couldn't pay them, and we had to liquidate the business. So it was, just horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, it's a really dark time.
Yeah, it really was, yeah.
I was a recruiter during that period as well, and I think I had the fortune of ignorance that I'd started my recruitment career at the beginning of 2008. And you said there it crept up. I remember that because I remember asking a question that at the time I thought was a fantastic interview question when I was being interviewed, of asking, what are your thoughts on the impending possible credit crunch, because that was what it was called, wasn't it? And then like fast forward 7 months, it was a full-blown global recession. And yeah, it slowly but surely it sort of ate away at that market.
And then it was, to put it into context for people who maybe weren't around then, It was so severe as well. We'll come on to what happened with Pegasus and growing the brand, but obviously because I'm in construction, something I know every day. In Leeds, obviously where I'm from and where the office is based, there wasn't a tower crane on the horizon of Leeds until 2013. So nothing new build was getting built in Leeds until 2013. That's how severe the impact, certainly in the regions. London bounced back a lot quicker, but in the regions, the severity was felt for years after. It was, I distinctly remember 2013. It's like, fuck, there's a tower crane on the horizon. That's amazing. Yeah. But yeah, the impact of the 2008 global recession was immense.
I remember similar conversations about like cranes. It's something that I think unless you were in construction or in construction recruitment, as we were, it wouldn't be even something that would come into your thinking, was it? And do you know what? In fact, anyone listening to this, I'd say look out the window now if you're in a city centre and see how many cranes are around you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And imagine that going from none and, like you say, not appearing again for 4 or 5 years is huge. In hindsight, what would you have done differently?
Don't fit out a very expensive office with high rent and be obsessed with cash flow and have money in the bank. So now, Jamie, as I say to all of my team, we've ultimately got to make profit each year. However, I will never be in that position again. I've got a lot of money in the business bank account, and I'll never, ever be in a place where I have to make all of my team redundant before Christmas. It won't happen. So, I will personally take sacrifice ahead of that. I'll leave money in the bank rather than drawing it out, because I'm absolutely obsessed that I never want to be in that place again.
I think and obviously that comes from first-hand real experience and pain and going through a terrible time that's taught you that lesson, right?
Yeah.
If there's other people listening to this, maybe they're newer to starting up a recruitment business. Like, how much money? Like, how much is enough to? What's the sleep at night number?
Yeah, look, I'm always candid with people. We've probably got about 700 grand just sat in savings accounts in the business now. So that, of course, would not get us through a year in terms of well, it probably would in terms of running costs, not in terms of making any profit. But in theory, I could probably cope with a year without billing a single thing. Wouldn't like to do that, of course.
Yeah.
But we probably can do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Different people have different levels of tolerance for that. I think what I would say is, the mistake we made is we built an empire, and I take collective responsibility for it. But I think myself and my fellow business partner at the time, James at Jigsaw, we were ridiculously out of proportion. We had an insanely expensive office. So first of all, don't commit to very expensive offices. But secondly, we ended up with too many admin staff. We had too many people. In our defence, I think we were trying to build something that was capable of going up to 100 people. But in hindsight, I wouldn't do that again. So you've got to keep lean. You've not got to continue to add costs to the business that you can't strip back quickly. So obviously, yes, you can let go of people, but on top of that, rent, LinkedIn recruiter licenses, etc., etc. You can quickly get quite fat, and before you know it, you've suddenly got, holy fuck, I've got this much money I've got to pay each month before I make any money. And that's what I'd probably advise, just try and keep as lean as possible. Don't get overexcited. Don't say things like the idea of a very expensive office. Why do you need that? Just keep it lean, and as you get to a certain size, then maybe you can relook at that.
That was maybe the model at the time, though, wasn't it? And I know things were very different, and we're going back like almost 20 years.
Yeah.
But I felt like everyone was trying to grow, maybe not the next Hayes, but or a BBT, but that was the thing, wasn't it? Like,
absolutely, yeah.
Whereas now you see far more 5, 6, 7 person boutique type businesses that are, like you say, they're lean, and we've got 7 people that all bill 300 grand, and rather than 40 22-year-olds all billing 120, 150 type numbers.
And candidly, we'll obviously come on to Pegasus, but we've had a few kind of iterations, I guess, through the life of Pegasus since it started in 2009. But I think probably as where I stand now, that will be the model going forward now, because I think we have had a shift. You can massively expand your own personal brand on social media. There's a lot of tech out there to enable us to do things more efficiently. And my model now is I will continue to scout now for very experienced recruiters, still within the built environment, but individuals who I know I can support to maybe go from being a 200k biller to be a 300k biller, and go with that model, I think, going forward, because it's becoming increasingly hard to blood 360 recruiters for various reasons, but it's becoming harder to do that, I believe. Is there,
and last thing on Jigsaw, are there any lasting kind of like red flags that like winter is coming, that, like as I said, that 2008, we were speaking about it in the January. It was October when, like you said, Lehman Brothers went under.
No, I don't think there was any possibly there was.
Would there be any now, though? Any things that you'd go, oh, hang on, that's a bit of a warning sign?
I think you've got to be aware of your numbers. So obviously, again, if we had it, I don't know if we paid enough attention to it, but we had certainly, I have monthly P&L now, which is really, it keeps you really honest about what you're actually billing out and what it's costing you to run the business. And that's critical. But what I would say, Jamie, is I don't think there are going to be more of these black swan events come along, as well as recessions. Nobody could have predicted the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the severity and pace that the pandemic happened. Thank goodness for the furlough process. That certainly saved mine and a lot of businesses at the time. Nobody could predict things like that. So I would actually say, rather than trying to constantly monitor and kind of get yourself into a frenzy, the current frenzy is, what's AI going to do to us all, and is it going to displace jobs? So not only is it going to impact my business from my team and maybe on the flip side internal recruiters, but is it going to actually affect the people that I actually place day to day? So there's always something. What I think a better strategy is keep cash in the bank, make sure your running costs are covered, be obsessed with cash flow, be obsessed with always getting out there and trying to win more business, and then hopefully you can ride those kind of waves.
So moving on to Pegasus then, I think it would have been fair if at the end, if after that, like everything you went through and the personal stuff as well, that you'd gone like, sod this, I'm either getting out of this game or I'll go and take a job with a Hayes or a Randstad but you didn't. You went again, right?
Yeah, too stubborn for that, I think.
Yeah, so
too stubborn.
Just talk me through that thought process there and the decision making, I suppose. Like you said, you're newly married. I don't know what your wife's opinion on it was, but how did that decision play out?
We basically, the business closed. I set up Pegasus straight away, just as a company on Company's House. The truth be told, our sales really on two fronts. I'd lost the business that I'd put blood, sweat and tears in, and I'd lost probably the biggest kind of mentor in my life in terms of my father. So it hugely impacted me. I guess the only thing that kept me going by that point is I had our first daughter Lucy, who was born in July of 2008, and she kind of kept me going through that. To be honest, though, for the first 6 months, Jamie, of 2009, I wasn't in a good place. And there's a lot of talk around mental health and everything now. It's something I can, hand on heart say, luckily for me, I've never really suffered from. But probably that period was like a really dark 6 months for me, just kind of trying to rebuild, just trying to recover from the fact that we'd done everything for that business. We were literally burnt the candle at both ends with that business. And it was pretty brutal, and I was pretty scarred from it. To this day, I'm always very grateful for one of my key clients, a business called Turner & Townsend, and two individuals there, a guy called Bruce McCarroll, who's no longer with the business, and a guy called Murray Rowden, who gave me some work to do, basically gave me some retained work to find them some senior hires within the kind of infrastructure space that just secured a role on Crossrail. That kind of saved me, frankly. It gave me two key roles, which were big fees. And on top of that, kind of got me through the first 6 months, by which point we were starting to see the kind of green shoots of the market. But on top of that, I was probably back on the horse then by kind of middle of 2009 to say, right, I need to build something again.
It gives you something to focus on, I suppose, as well, doesn't it? If someone saying, like, here's two things to like get back in it. So it starts with you, and were you like working from home at that point? What were you? Where'd you base?
I literally set up an office in a spare room, but I was going mad. So again, by about June 2009, I moved into an office in the centre of Leeds. It was something run by the Leeds Metropolitan University, so it was kind of like almost kind of an incubator type place. So it was dirt cheap, basically.
This is way before like co-working was a thing.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And my goodness, it definitely was a rough end of co-working. But interesting, I met some other recruiters in there as well, and who again we're friends today still. And it was a good little community. Pretty much not long after that, I think by the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, I took my first employee on, Hayley, who's still with me. Who looks after everything that's not recruitment in the business, so that we can get on recruitment. We grew it from there, Jamie. And
then what's will you give us like a whirlwind tour of 2009 to today? How's the business grown and changed and evolved?
So I was genuinely scarred for quite a while off the back of Jigsaw, so I was adamant that I wasn't going to kind of rebuild something again, and kept it fairly humble, if I'm honest. We probably peaked going into COVID, going into the pandemic at about 7 people. Some of those were part-timers as well. But obviously, the pandemic gave a lot of people time to reflect on things, and I had a bit of an epiphany to say, I'm not done yet here. I'm not done. I need to get on with growing something again, because I was on the verge of it with Jigsaw, and I've got to get back on it. So we rebuilt. We went pretty rapid after that. I'd noticed an opportunity to a thing called Kickstart, which was a program they introduced, the government introduced, to try and get young people back into work post-pandemic. They had the opportunity for people or companies to be what's termed a gateway partner, so basically to engage between the employers and young people trying to find work and get them into work. So we jumped on that, and proud to say we helped hundreds of young people back into work at the time, because the market just coming out of COVID back in the 2021 was still a bit slow. So that was great. That generated us a fair amount of income, but also really proud that we helped a lot of young people into work. As well as that, we recruited a lot of people ourselves through the Kickstart scheme to join us. So very quickly, by maybe the end of 21, we were up to kind of 20 staff in the office, as well as some of the more experienced hires we made. If I'm honest, Jamie, that was too quick. We grew too quick. We made probably some poor hires, or people who weren't really certain where they wanted to be in their career and life. So we've kind of bobbed around between that number. We're now currently down to 14 across the business. Essentially, we've got 9 billers. The rest are kind of 180s or admin, essentially. And
you're involved in a few different markets now, right? Because you've got
Correct.
The other party business
Correct.
as well.
Yeah. So I've always focused in primarily construction consultancy, so QS, PM, building surveying, project controls, planning. Chris focuses on the renewable side. On the renewable side, our market is generally specialist contractors who install particularly solar. Let's say they might be involved in installing all the solar panels across somewhere like an Amazon's portfolio of distribution centres, as an example.
And you're very much still hands-on, aren't you? You're still out there billing.
Still the biggest biller, yeah, in the business, yeah.
Wear that badge with pride.
I do. I don't think I could ever let go of it. To be honest. And to be honest, going forward, I think that's probably what the model at Pegasus will continue to be. I think, and some people might say that's madness. It means that you're always in the business, which yes, I am. The model, as I alluded to earlier, is we're going to find some really experienced hires and keep growing those individuals and give them, I guess, the bells and whistles to get them to be really high-performing consultants.
Yeah, and you've done that this year as well, haven't you? Like I've seen it firsthand, like the people that you've brought in, like very, very accomplished at what they do and know their market inside out.
Yeah, and we need more of them. If we can find them, we need more of them. Not obviously easy to find, and at the end of the day, most people who are good are usually well entrenched where they are. But I think we've got something to offer, and we're certainly, our brand within the space I operate in is getting stronger and stronger. Could we
change direction slightly? Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier, you said about personal branding. I'd say you've got a pretty prolific LinkedIn presence. Mm-hmm. You do a hell of a lot on LinkedIn, I suppose. Strong personal brand. How does that impact like the wider business? Or is that the strategy that it impacts the wider business? I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, I started following a lot of people know called Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, many years ago, and I was just, I must have started listening a lot, maybe 2015, 2016 to him, and I said, right, that's it, I'm going to do what he says to do. So literally from when I started in 2017, I literally posted every day on LinkedIn, every day, Christmas Day, every day. On holiday, every day, posted on LinkedIn for 2 years solid, so all of 2017, all 2018. Just listen verbatim to what he said, just get content out there and see what happens. It did well. I've got a lot of people who follow me, a lot of people who genuinely think I add value to the sector that I serve. Some of this stuff maybe is slightly controversial at times, but I'm genuinely passionate about trying to help the industry that I serve. And so it's gone from there, and the vast majority of the stuff I work on personally, the billings I make, nearly all of it is now inbound. You
said there like 2 years of posting every single day, and you said there it works. How do you? What are you measuring? Is it impressions? Is it comments? Is it like inbound? And fun enough, so like Will, who sat behind the camera here, him and I were chatting over a coffee this morning, and we were saying like with marketing generally, it's so hard now to attribute like real ROI unless it's paid advertising, and what you're doing isn't. It's purely organic. So how do you measure that?
Well, I think first of all, one is is it resonating? So am I getting more likes, follows, connections, impressions? So I saw a post the other day by Hisham Azuz. He'd put the number of impressions he'd got over the year, and I think he'd got like 7 million I'm going to see what I did over the last year, and he beat me and frustrated me. But I think it was up to like 6.5 million impressions that I'd had over the last year, which is like, that's brilliant. That's a lot of people seeing my content on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And so, first of all, just measure that. Have we got a good upward trend in that capacity? But secondly, just the bit where I can measure the ROI is, as I say, nearly every placement I make at the moment is people messaging me going, can you help me find a job? Or can you help us find somebody? And so I guess that's the most measurable ROI. I had a really good year last year. I would say 3/4 of it came directly from LinkedIn. People messaging me on LinkedIn saying, find me a job.
How much of what you do is planned, and how much of it is like off the cuff? This is on my mind at the moment.
Nearly all off the cuff. I would say I use kind of the note app on the iPhone religiously.
Yeah.
So anytime I'm randomly somewhere and I think that's a good idea, I'll stick it on my list of potential posts. Sometimes you see somebody else posting, that's a great post. I'll maybe follow that or copy that or do something similar. The thing I've got a bit of a notoriety for, a lot of people who I speak to for the first time go, what are you going to say this Friday? I started about a year ago saying Paul's Friday beer thoughts, and there'll always be a picture of me with a beer. And everyone always thinks that's all scripted. It's totally not. I literally usually sit with a beer and go, right, what am I going to say today?
Yeah. I often wondered that, of like how many do you stock up on the photos of the beer and the thoughts? And
it's always like, I'm passionate about it. It's got to always be live, so it's always literally, I always have to go and find myself a beer somewhere on a Friday. Usually the local kind of micro pub around the corner from our office. Or wherever else I am.
Is there any content that if I post this kind of stuff, that's going to get more impressions, more, like you said there, some of it's controversial.
Some of it has to be controversial. So if I'm always slightly light, and I think we'll do so the industry I serve, particularly quantity surveys, there's probably 50-50 of the audience who are either chartered MRICS or they're not. So if you want to blow it up, you just put a post about what's the value of MRICS, and there's like boom. You've got two different. I guess any post you've got to have interaction. You've got to have people who want to comment. If I'm honest though, Jamie, a lot of it is just you've got to be consistently there. I will spend sometimes a good half hour writing a post in detail that I think this is it. They're gonna love this post, and it completely bombs. I'll do one post off the cuff, and it'll blow up. I'm not sure there's necessarily rhyme or reason. I do think what I would say through the thread of what I do is that I do genuinely try and give value to my market. So the recruiters who just literally every day post jobs, it's like, well, what are you trying to achieve with that? You're not serving your market. So I would genuinely say I hope a lot of people who follow me believe I try and add value to the construction industry, and off the back of that, hopefully also get a good sense of me as a character. So sometimes I'll do personal posts about my family or what I'm doing. I love being in the mountains walking. I'll always stick posts on about that. So I think as long as people get a good sense of who I am, that I'm a decent human, I think most, that's a biggest hack for most good recruiters. If you want to be a really good recruiter, just be a fucking decent human first. If you do that well, then people resonate with that and want to work with you and trust you. There's still too many recruiters out there who would kind of sell the grandma type scenario. I always want to be ethical, honest, decent with people. A bit of a tagline that we have in our business is human first, recruiter second. Just be decent human being. And I think as long as people get a sense of that, which I think they do with a lot of my posts, and the fact that I'm trying to help the industry, throwing in with the odd controversial post, I think hopefully gets, a lot of people say to me, some of your posts really get me thinking, or it's as if you were writing that post for me. I guess there's no, I wouldn't say I've got an absolute blueprint for it, but I would say they're the rough metrics rough kind of process I work to.
Why do you think so many business owners, founders shy away from it? Because there's 30,000 recruitment businesses in the UK and Ireland. Therefore, they all must have an owner, right? I don't know, some of them are solos, but there's very few, and my entire network is people in the recruitment industry. There's very few comparative to the number of people out there that actually have do what you're doing. And then funnily enough, I had a guy from a completely different sector, Alex Westworth, on recently, and he runs the business, he's the CEO, and he's prolific on LinkedIn, but I think you guys are few and far between. There's a lot of silent CEOs. What do you think the reason for that is?
Just probably a few different reasons. I think one is some people are just uncomfortable with it, are concerned about the potential ramifications if they put a post out that people don't agree with. You often see a lot of people get, ripped up on LinkedIn for certain posts. My attitude to that is, look, as long as, coming back to I might put the odd controversial post out there, as long as my general theme is of helping people, of being invested in the industry, then people are going to forgive the odd post that they don't like that I put out there. I think, frankly, there's still a lot of cowboys in the recruitment industry, so a lot of them know full well if they start putting posts out about, being genuine this and doing that, then they're going to get ripped up by people approaching them going, no, you've not, are you? That's not, and kind of burning them on LinkedIn. I'd like to believe the vast majority of people I engage with think I'm a good guy, do what I say I'm going to do, and so I've got nothing to hide on LinkedIn. So I think there's that. I think just constantly thinking up the material. And I say I struggle with it, the odd day I think, right, because I'm committed to posting every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I usually do another post or two depending on what I come up with. Some days I sit there and I'm like, what am I going to say today?
Yeah.
I don't always have it, I don't always have, I've got this, my notes on my app, but I don't always have one ready to go. So I guess the last thing is just how much of a priority it is. For me, it's an absolute priority. It happens before anything else in the morning. When I'm at my desk, first thing I do is a LinkedIn post.
I think there's something there with, like you said, I did it every day for 2 years, and I think our world is obsessed with instant gratification, but I think our industry is, isn't it, of chasing like stuff that's going to pay us straight away, and that's not, like you're talking about 2 years of posting Christmas Day on holiday, that delayed gratification of like, if I follow this, I just do what Gary Vee tells me to do, eventually it pays off. I think maybe some of that plays into
my
it.
posts were getting very few, as you hear all the time, whoever you speak to, whether it's Gary Vee or any other influencers, it's like they were getting no hits to begin with, but it snowballs eventually.
Can we dive into like another, I don't know if I call it marketing, but it's something else that you do. Like I believe that if you run a podcast in the right way, it can be a legitimate business development strategy or tool. You've got your podcast, right? What's the thinking behind that? How did it start? Was that the intention, that it was more inbound business?
So I started Pegasus Radio, which is the podcast channel, 2019. Again, I'd probably say it's probably a Gary Vee thing. Is like he was on a podcast. Like, I need to do this podcast thing, and
that's pretty early adoption. It
was fairly early adoption, yeah, and not like this kind of setup. So we'll come on to what I'm doing now. But to begin with, it was literally me just recording it on Zoom, and then downloading the audio, and it was basically primarily me just giving career advice. So one after the other of career advice. Right. Around COVID, I started interviewing some business leaders, again just over Zoom. But again, just the audio, so it's nothing to do with video, nothing to do with YouTube, just so I could do it, so I could capture the audio. And I was quite committed. There's well over 200 episodes on Pegasus Radio, and I'll be honest, in the last year, then probably last year and a half, I just let it go. Life got too busy. I stopped prioritising it, which was madness, really. I don't think my numbers aren't brilliant. I'm always an open book with everything, Jamie. My numbers aren't brilliant. We probably peaked at Pegasus Radio at about 2,000 downloads a month, which for a niche podcast, I was pretty proud of that, because I knew my audience was very much.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah. Bear in mind that's full download, so I guess some of those are your prolific listeners, and I was pumping out one a week, but still pretty proud of that. But I thought probably early this year, we need to reinvigorate that, and there's a few good podcasts out there that I listen to about recruitment owners, and I thought, there's nobody doing this within the actual consultancy world, so set up growing consultancies, and we've got 2 studios that we're recording, one in Manchester, one in London, where it's full setup like me and you doing here now, and it enables us to then get on YouTube as well. And you're absolutely right, it's a brilliant business development tool, because obviously people want to be on a podcast talking about their business. So absolutely, from when we first started it, maybe about 2 months ago now, either I've reached out to people and I can say, look, here's the channel, have a look at it. Do you want to be on it? And most people say yes, but also we've had people approaching us saying, can I be on it? Which is quite cool as well.
What's the process of follow-up? So you identify a business owner, say, do you want to come? I'd love you to come on my podcast. They say yes, have a great conversation. Then what happens after? How organic is that? How planned is the next steps?
So I think candidly that depends on the business owner, insofar as some of them absolutely love it, they're super grateful, they super want to say, what can I do to help it further? And we've interviewed, Jamie, some really small businesses. Some of them absolutely have already given us work off the back of it and say, look, can you support me with growing the team? Others are probably not in the place to require a recruiter yet. A lot of same as any business, whether it be a recruitment business, a construction consultancy business, usually when somebody sets up a business, they probably know who the first 10 or so hires are going to be, just from people they've already worked with who they'll approach directly.
Yeah.
And I'm completely cool with that. It makes perfect sense. I would do the same. But I think somebody's business, as they grow further, I'd like to think they absolutely will come back to us, and we're going to, maintain regular contact with them. I think the next step is that once we've got the video, we cut it up into segments of bits that were interesting, maybe 1 minute to 2 minutes long, and we send those to them, and we encourage them, as well as us putting them on our socials, for them to put them on their socials. So hopefully it keeps on pinging every so often, and they'll tag me into it, and it'll just keep the merry-go-round going.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you decide on who to invite on? Is it purely commercial? I think there might be an opportunity there. Is it, I've had it with other people, they're going, I just asked the people that I think to start with are going to say yes?
Probably the latter. In terms of initially, it's just let's just get anybody on who fits the bill. So for me, it has to be a leader or an owner of a construction consultancy business. So we're keeping it narrow in that regard. We're not going outside of that. As wide as we've got is we had a guy called Matt Easton who specialises in leadership developing leaders within the construction consultancy space. But other than that, it's always leaders, founders of it. To begin with, it's just let's see who comes on. The next evolution is I probably need to get some individuals working with some of my larger consultancy clients and get some of them on the podcast. Candidly, more just because to kind of piggyback off their market, their connections. That if they're a major consultancy, then they'll likely have more people potentially listen. Some of the guys, with due respect to some of the guests I've had on so far, are very, very small consultancies. And I think they're all viable. They're all brilliant stories. The one that's just gone out this week, like Dave Lowry, who runs a very niche small consultancy. He's not your typical construction consultancy owner. He doesn't come from a typical background, and it's a brilliant story. So it's great. So we should do more of those. But certainly the intent will be now that we've got some momentum, and to episode 14 that's actually live. I think we'll now start to be a bit more targeted as to who we go after, to just fundamentally help grow the brand, and help grow the podcast, and off of growing that podcast, hopefully more people will get value from it. I'm a big believer, a massive believer, that what goes around comes around in life. At the end of the day, if you put enough, and I'm not to be really woo-woo, but if you put enough love and effort out in the world, then it'll come back to you in some way. So it's not necessarily always about trying to find a financial angle. A lot of the people I've got on the podcast today are already existing clients of mine. So I don't need to make them work with me anymore. It's absolutely another avenue for developing new clients. Maybe this is going all the way back to social media, full stop. If all you're trying to do is sell, if every intent you do, every message you put out is a sales pitch of some kind, it really winds me up when you see a lot of posts and it fundamentally just comes down to being a sales pitch. Sometimes I'll go on various courses that people might say, "Oh, look, we've got this free webinar; it's really interesting."
Yeah.
And it's just a sales pitch, or even worse, ones you actually pay for, and they're just a sales pitch from the beginning of the webinar or whatever it is, or the course. It's like I didn't ask to be sold to. I asked to be educated, to learn something. So I think fundamentally, if you go at imagine your I guess a lot of people talk about an ICP, but imagine your ideal customer profile. Just say, right, how can I serve them? How can I do a really genuinely good job of serving them? And I believe that'll just then come back. Yeah, I couldn't agree any more with that. If anyone's listening to this and they're thinking, do you know what, I know that could be an effective strategy for us in terms of brand positioning, business development. What advice would you give to anyone thinking of starting a podcast? Now that we're doing it properly, the whole filming in a studio, what I would say is you need to be committed. It takes a lot longer than you think. So obviously you've got to commit to a day of filming every so often. So we film we're actually filming twice in November, but generally it's every other month we'll film between the Manchester or London studio. The reality is you first of all got to go out there and get people and book in the slots. You've then got a full day of filming, it means you are literally, it's intense and it's one after the other. Yeah. You'll be knackered by the time you've done 4 of these today, Jamie. It's intense stuff. But then you've got to edit it. So obviously, yes, we have a professional editor who edits the videos, but it's then us who looks through each video and finds the clips that we want, and then we cut each clip, we transcribe each clip, so it's got subtitles. it's all pretty time intensive. We've then got to chase up the guests we had on, make sure that when we post it on LinkedIn, when I post it, when it goes out, that they then comment on that. So all I would say is it's quite an intense process. And I would say, to give people an idea, overall, we've got some pretty reasonable providers in terms of studios we use, the editor we use. But overall, if I look at everything, so for example, obviously every time I'm down here, I'm always down the night before because I'm starting from 9 o'clock. I don't want to be on a 6 o'clock train and be knackered by the time I get there, or worse, the train's late. So you're doing that, etc., etc. So I reckon we conservatively estimate each episode costs us about $1,000 overall to put out. So you've got to be committed to the process.
It's a big investment of time and money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Podcasts for life, not just for Christmas.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Any advice you'd get? Because I think some people just go, just start, and the rest will follow. Is that?
I think like with anything, coming back again to like posting on LinkedIn, just start. If you want to do a podcast, just start, and then you'll kind of fumble your way through it to an extent. I think as we're evolving now, I really try and think, and I liked the way you did it actually, Jamie. Sent me a list of the questions you were going to ask, because today what we've done is we've had a set of standard questions we try and get through with every. So I've got a thread, and I think there's some value in that in terms of pulling back. Right, what's your tech stack you're using, and I can probably create a separate video on that people will find some value in. But I think you've got to ask engaging questions, interesting questions. If you look at like what Stephen Bartlett does really well, he captures clips that are like people are really intrigued on. So I think there's one of his episodes a while ago when he had Gary Neville on, and Gary Neville starts crying on the podcast, and it's like, and he clips that, and instantly like, what? I need to know what that's all about now. So you've got to try and get stuff that's going to be interesting. If they all sound the same, and I'm already conscious of that, I've got to make sure that there's each guest I have now has probably got something interesting to say, and I try and maybe get under their skin a bit and try and get some real value for the listeners out of it. Rather than going through a process each time.
I think that's a really important thing. It's something I ask everyone before they come on here is, what are you going to leave our listeners with? What's a golden nugget you can leave them with? And I think that you're absolutely right. It has to be, you want that to be different every single time. I think that comes from a variety of guests. Paul, I'm really conscious of time, that we're nearly at the end. Before we wrap up, I'd be really keen, could you give us, what does the next 12 months look like for Pegasus? I know you said you're going to hire experienced recruiters, but what's the market looking like in your industry and for recruiters more generally? What are your thoughts on the next 12 months?
So first of all, we're lucky that we're in a built environment, and generally speaking, I know certain sectors of recruitment, tech, etc., have had a really torrid time. We're quite lucky that we've not had that torrid time. We're in very candidate short markets, which is arguably always a better place to be. Sometimes it's frustrating just quite how candidate short the market is, but obviously much better than the opposite, much better than lots of jobs and too many candidates. Not enough jobs and too many candidates. So I'm reasonably confident. We'll see. We'll see what happens with the budget in the next 2 weeks. But I'm reasonably confident that we will continue. We'll have a solid plan to continue to grow. We're looking heavily at our brand, more on our brand and more on our kind of tech stack and what we're doing to try and simplify things. But as I've said earlier, Jamie, very much, how do I convert some of my 200k billers to 300k billers and really push the level, make them. Yeah, the brand is probably anchored around me, candidly, but I think also try and make them famous as well. Try and get them, more visible than they already are on LinkedIn, etc. Very few good recruiters I know are great admin individuals, and I think we just need to kind of create systems and process that kind of take some of that stress out of their day and allow them to just spend more time on the phone or actually sat down in person with candidates and clients.
If there's anyone listening that is thinking, I'm an experienced recruiter, I bill 200 grand a year, I'd love to work with that guy and for him to help me bill 300 grand a year, 400, 500. What's the best way for people to get in touch? Yeah,
look, I'm always on LinkedIn, as we already discussed, so LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to find me. So hit me up on LinkedIn. And look, without being a sales pitch about us, if people genuinely feel that you always got to be careful, aren't you, Jamie? There's so much cliche bullshit. I was about to start saying, I thought I'm going to say the same bullshit as everybody else says. It's, look, we genuinely believe we're building a really solid brand. We've got some exceptional clients. I believe I can support people in being better. I'm still very much in the trenches every day billing. So I'm the biggest biller in our business, and that won't change. I'd like somebody to come and threaten me with that, but So I'm doing it every day still. I'm not somebody who stopped billing 10 years ago and gives people a lot of stupid KPIs to do. And don't get me wrong, before anyone misinterprets that, I'm certainly serious about us needing KPIs. It's the only way you keep yourself honest. Only way I keep myself honest as a recruiter. I think sometimes you can have a really busy week, and when you look at it and go, but what have I actually done that's generated activity?
Yeah.
So I think it's always important to do that. So I'm not saying we're not serious about that, because we absolutely are. But equally, hopefully, I think we're in a kind of grown-up environment. We've got some of our people in our Leeds office. Some of our team work different parts of the country remotely. You can either put them in an office where they are, or they can work from home. We're quite relaxed on all of that. We just want good people who know what they're doing, are passionate about their industry, believe in ethics. I would not take a biller on who could bill a fortune if they were just toxic and not ethical. That just wouldn't work for me. That wouldn't last here.
Brilliant, Paul. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries. Cheers.